Two guys, construction workers, and they did high-rise construction like in New York or someplace, right? And every day they would have lunch together, and they'd be up high up on a girder, and they would come and sit down, hanging over the city, seeing the whole skyscape, and they would open up their lunch boxes, and one of the guys would say, "Oh no, cream and cheese sandwich." He was an Italian immigrant. "Oh no, cream and cheese sandwich. I hate a cream and cheese sandwich." And the other guy would just look at him like. That went on day after day, and at some point, about a dozen days into their lunch times together, the American guy looked at him and said, "Why don't you have your wife make something different for you?" And the Italian looked at him and said, "I'm not married." So one of the things that some of the people that I've worked with over the years, I'll get a call and they'll say, "I made myself a cream and cheese sandwich today." So that the entire way in which we interact with a sense of who we are as not being good enough or whatever the wound is, and then however that shows up in our world, that's what we're always, that interface is where we have to wake up. That's where we have to get clear. We have to begin to understand and value our participation in what our reality looks like and is experienced as. The opportunity to realize when you are being triggered that is an opportunity can be a really high bar, because the experiences because we've projected this reality, it looks as if it acts upon us, so we've confused what's cause in the matter of what's showing up and our identity. We have the confusion there. About a year ago, when I first came back from Brazil, I was telling the story about my little grandson who was 4 at the time, and we were sitting on the beach. All of you have heard this story, but it's an interesting one. So Otis is sitting on the beach next to me, and he's playing with my aging, soft, flabby arm, right? He said, "Mama Pali, why are you so soft?" I said, "Because I'm so old." He said, "What do you mean you're old?" And I said, "Well, you know how we have birthday parties and then we're a year older?" He said, "Oh, we have birthday parties. We have birthday cake. Birthday cake makes you soft." So I said, Otis had a good handle on correlation, but not what was cause in the matter, right? Right. So we're looking at what, in fact, is cause in the matter of how our world shows up, not so that we can be self-judging or blaming ourselves, but so that we can be free from a lie that we concluded about ourselves at a very early age in this lifetime. Probably brought one in with us from a past life, if you like that story of past life. Yeah. And so we're coming back home. When we come home to that place that we experienced in the meditation, we know that as that sense of presence, that sense of home, that sense that all is well. And in that place, that is what's true. Everything else, especially when it's problematic, especially when it creates difficulty and suffering, we know it as the projection through what I call the distortion field of our woundedness. And so the opportunity in waking up, and we'll get to why that's not just important for each one of us, but important for the collective. So as we come home to seeing what's causing the matter of that experience, that showing up, that sense of limitation, that sense of oftentimes confusion, all of the things that we lump together and call suffering, to understand what's causing the matter of that, so that we can lift the frequency out of the fear that's at the core of what's caused. Because what is caused is that core wounded conclusion, I'm not good enough or I don't matter. And everybody in this room that I've worked with, and all of you on the Zoom, we've talked about this, but it remains to be the place where we still give allegiance and power to something. And I have a sneaking feeling it's like because we created it, right? There's a way in which out of our limitation, our projection, our sense of being a person, it may not be wonderful to be me, but hey, it's the Popeye syndrome. I am who I am. And so we start to see what is this that's going on. That's a projection. It's like a dream. And the character in the dream, at the core of that identity, is a conclusion. I don't matter. I'm not important. I can't have what I want. I'll never be free. And then the power of who we are as consciousness is usurped on behalf of that lie. And then we create an entire reality out of it. And it's compelling. It's like, believe it, hell, let me tell you the story, right? So we create confirmation after confirmation of our own limitation. When we know that space, to the degree that we know that space, when we drop out of our minds and into our hearts, and we know that place as home, and that it's vital, and that's more real than the kind of thin, projected illusion of being a person. When we come home to that place and we value that, and the nature of that is awareness, it's compelling when we start to realize that without that true nature as awareness, we wouldn't even know about our limited fear-based ego self. That's what we use the awareness on behalf of, that creation, that limitation. And then we suffer with it, right? Not going to the place, we do go to the place now, this place of this shared experience of consciousness, of awareness, without which nothing gets experienced. Nothing. I'm not good enough, or I'm not important. So we start to come home. It's like we're backing out of the projected. It's like when you maybe wake up in the morning and realize you had a dream, and then you kind of fall back asleep, and that there may be a different dream or another dream. But in that lighter sleep, you are aware that it's a dream, not lucid dreaming so much as just this being pulled into a kind of story. So the true nature of who we are is so powerful and so present. Like I said, without it, you don't get to know anything about a limited idea about yourself, or a limited idea about the world, or how bad things are, or how good things are. You don't have any of that without what is true nature, awareness, consciousness as cause. Everything except that is a creation. It is an object. We begin to, when we get caught in the subject, awareness, object, external reality, dynamic, then we are believing that the cause in our experience is the external, the object. If that object hadn't shown up, it might look like a partner who is unkind. It might look a limitation with finances, or it might look like no place. It could look like anything, but that's an object. So coming home to oneself as subject, which is awareness, we start to be present here. That's frequency is one of love. That frequency is one of connection. That's a frequency where, because if we are back with ourselves in any moment where our self-judgment has fallen away, we experience oneness with all that is. There's no separation with us and other, because our self-judgment is all that's ever kept us in the dynamic of subject here and object there. So as that is resolved, as that is allowed to dissipate, then we have the experience of being present. And this is what's happening, looking like amazing apparent others. looking like Maui, looking like whatever it looks like, right? But now there's no judgment, there's no obfuscation between you and all that's showing up as your world, as your life. And because there's no separation there, then the frequency of that, I should say that because the frequency of that is connection and love, now what gets created is the arising of everything that we say we value, whether it's peacefulness or ease or freedom, whatever it is, it's already who we are. But what we cannot experience ourselves as long as we've got this distortion field, this lens of I'm not important, I don't matter. And even when I say that, and I know all of you and here and there are having a similar experience, probably of like, are we really that self-involved? Right? It's like we're so convinced, we're so centered on our limitation that it's a kind of perverse pride in it, right? I'm really not good enough. I'm really not important. So we have the frequency, all of that comes from a frequency of fear. And so as that self-judgment falls away, because we see it as the conclusion of a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old or a past life trauma, whatever, because we see that it's already not running the show in the same way that it did when that's who we thought we were exclusively. So there's already beginning to be a shift in the frequency. And the frequency is what creates this reality. It's a frequency reality. The frequency of fear caught in our early childhood conclusion creates a reality of difficulty and looking like others, looking like separation, looking like problems. That's the frequency of fear. And that fear frequency is embodied and then shows up as the reality once we are projecting through the lens of our woundedness. So as the frequency begins to shift, right, it's already, like I said, it's already not holding like this is just the way it is. That was the collective conditioning for decades, for lifetimes. The collective condition of cause and effect. If you do this, you get that, and then you'll be happy. Right? Everything being externally posited, that we had to get something to be okay. If I believe I'm not good enough, I have to get something to prove to all the others that also believe what I believe about myself. So that's the dynamic of what's going on. Now, as we and many thousands of others, because of technology, because of there's so many awakening ones, and what we're waking up to is who we are. That's what true nature is. That's that meditation that we share, where we come into the vibrant oneness of that field of the one I am. We can experience that. We know that. That feels like home. It doesn't feel like home to be caught up in limitation, to be caught up in fear. And so when we're caught there, we suffer. But as we just a little bit back up, if you can see it, you're not it. I often say in working with many of you that this was the shift in consciousness that happened for this body-mind unit. I realized if I could see that pattern, if I could see that limitation, that I was the awareness that was seeing it. And in that moment, the shift in perception occurred. And I began to identify with the seer, with the awareness of it. So no longer am I at the subject, I'm not subjected to it. I am present watching it. It's the movie. The shit was still happening, right? It didn't clear up in some miraculous way, but all of a sudden it was not about me, because if I could see it, then it was an object. Knowing myself as subject, the one I am. Well, I think I got off track there, but we'll open it up to any topics or any questions. I feel like I've been all over the place today, but I feel like also that all of you are right here with me in this opening. It's like a flower opening. It is the lotus opening into our true nature and the realization of the power of what's true right here, right now, always only what's right here, right now, because that illusion of the space-time intersection is where we're caught in fear and limitation. And so we feel the effulgence, we feel the arising possibility of a life. Like, this is it. You know, it doesn't have to have any particular quality or aspect to it. It's deliciousness on its own, and I am that. And that's, as we start to value that and be that, then the frequency for the planet changes. I guess if there's any place I ever want to go with any of the groups that we do together, it's to that larger picture that we have been contributing, and we've been contributing to a planetary condition of fear and limitation through our individual self-rejection, the wound, because that's a frequency of fear. And this is a frequency reality. So if there's anything that, and I know everyone on this call, in this room, all of us long to have a greater reality of peace and love and connection, and the highest meaning of those words. But the way that we contribute to that is to do our work here. The way that we contribute to that is to erase the place where we're caught in a frequency of fear, because this is a frequency reality. And in redreaming this world, it depends on us waking up out of our own little version of there's a way that it should be and it's not that way. Our own little version of limitation, our own little version of objecting to things, right? Looking out there and believing that there's an out there that I need to correct or to change in some way, and coming home to where cause is and loving that that's available. Yeah. Hey,
So if there's any questions in the room or on Zoom, if you're on Zoom, please hit the reaction button and raise your hand, and then I'll spotlight you. Or if you're on the phone, you can just unmute yourself. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your message. I appreciate it. And how do I get this through to my 14-year-old?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say you first.
Right. And I have been working deeply
Yes,
on this.
I-
And it's taken me places I'd never imagined I would be here in Maui. And I mean, I've tried to, like, starting just from kindness, right? And I don't know if it's a hormone thing or what, but it's like she's just not, I don't know if she's not wanting it or not hearing it, or maybe she's not seeing it, but she's not responding at all to, you know, it's a constant, you know, with kids, it's a repetitive thing. Everything you have to make sure you're repetitive to, so that they, you know, do it. And so it's like, okay, we're going to speak kindness. Okay, when you play kind. Okay, so when you look in the mirror, make sure you're thinking kind words. When you, everything you do, everything you think, everything you say has to be with love, because that's what we want back, right? I try and talk about karma all the time and all of these things, and it's just not, I don't know. I have no idea. It's not getting through. And then I think about myself and I'm like, oh my God, like, did I traumatize her so much that, you know, she can't understand the oneness or the peace or the love or anything? Because my other kids are like, I love God and I love me and I love this. And I'm like, she's also my first. So they say you know,
Yeah. So the other kids are younger, right?
Yes.
The happy ones that
Yeah.
love God and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So that's another thing. Is it an age thing? Is it just we have to get over this? Because she's not she's not a depressed child. She walks into a room and lights up the whole room, and speaks love anywhere she goes, except for in my house, which then again, I feel like, okay, well, this is her safe spot.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, so what is it that you want her to be different?
No. Well, just, I feel like she's not kind to herself. And she's not kind to her siblings or me or anybody. Until she walks out of the house.
Yeah, when she feels safe, like you said, in your house. There's a story about Gandhi who somebody brought their kid to Gandhi and said, I don't know what to do about this kid. All he wants to do is eat sugar. He eats candy all the time. And Gandhi said, bring him back in a week. So the father brought the kid back in a week, and the father said, why did we have to wait a week? He said, I was still eating sugar.
Oh,
So the whole thing is that your beingness is going to speak more to her than your teaching will. And it's going to be, seeing her through the eyes of love and seeing, and, it's just it's a perceptual shift for you, really. And then because it sounds as if she has a sense of freedom of expression in the home, that maybe she doesn't allow herself in the external to the home. And that's kind of true for all of us. But what's your biggest concern with your daughter?
I don't really have like a huge concern. She's an amazing kid. I just want her to be happy. And I feel like she's not happy all the time.
Right. Yeah. So, the piece about being in our world and being it's like the frequency that imbues our world has everything to do with us and very little to do with even the apparent others that we feel that we're responsible for in terms of parenting or whatever. And so to see her understanding the hormonal issues, she's a 14-year-old girl, she's your eldest, right? And seeing her with the eyes of love, which you do already, but without the eyes of concern or judgment. And so that you start to, it's like you will begin to be the space in which she shows up, and the love that you say you want her to express and to acknowledge and to see as you give that gift to her. I mean, it's like to allow whatever's happening to happen without believing it means anything about you or even about her, right? It's like lighten up a bit, basically. It's like allowing everything to be and trusting because it sounds like she's really remarkable and it sounds like you're doing a good job. The idea that we need to make our children be a certain way is pretty much every time a misplaced ambition for our kids. Whereas the being with them, the acknowledging of them, it's like that's what brings forth. The root word, the Latin root for the word education is educare, which means to bring forth that which lies latent within. But what we do with our educational and with our parenting is that we keep trying to dump in more. They need to learn this. They need to understand that. That's a lack of acknowledgement of our true nature and their true nature. Because from that place where we go in meditation, that arising and overflowing is like, that's the contribution they came to make to the world. And I don't know if that's helpful or not. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
so what you're saying, Polly, is that what needs to shift is my perception, the way that I'm seeing myself and the others, and nothing else needs to change. When they shift that perception of, because you say, look to ourselves or people or her daughter without that concerning that something is wrong.
Right.
And just when we see in that way, we are able to let go all the concerns and judgments. Just how you get there? Look to everyone and everything is out of concern and judgment.
Or you won't be able to until you've dropped the self-judgment. I think I mentioned that before in the Dharma talk, but the whole thing is we are seeing through the lens of our self-judgment, but it's getting projected out there, right? So as we do the inner work, the work that we do is on the childhood wound, because I believe that in my experience, that's at the heart or the core of our identity. I'm not good enough, I don't matter. And sometimes it's experiences that are much more dire than that, fraught, in fact. But once that falls away, then there's no distortion field perceptually, because that's what perception is at the heart of all of this, for sure. But perception through the lens of I'm a piece of shit or I don't matter, then that's informing your reality regarding, even if it looks like your daughter, looks like your partner, it looks like your finances, looks like your world. But if it's being perceived, if that distortion field falls away, there's no judgment there, then it's just what's happening. And from that place, you're not contorted by the fear that comes from believing that you're not good enough. And so you're free and you're present with exactly what's happening in the moment. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so it sounds simplistic to say with no self-judgment, there won't be any judgment, but that's the explanation of that. The self-judgment distorts the perception and makes it impossible for you to show up authentically and in clarity and the sense of connection, because that self-judgment separates you from your world, looking like other people, looking like finances, looking like your world. It separates you from that. And now you are trying to have an impact or an effect on it, but you've rejected it as being you. And it is you. Yeah. And so access comes and connection comes, and I don't want to say power, but effectiveness comes by dropping what creates the separation and the inability to participate. You know, it's like what our true nature always says to everything is yes. Show me what you got. Bring it on. All right, look at what we got here. We've got a 14-year-old daughter, and I have ideas about how she could be happier if she were more loving. Right? Just say yes to her. Yeah, right, like that. And then what happens is, because there's no separation, the opportunity shows up. You see, because we've been so locked into a cause and effect kind of reality, then we deny the power of our true nature, which is oneness, to afford all kinds of possibilities that we can't figure out with our mind. But if we show up with willingness and connection, and we show up without our self-judgment, then we have access to the world that looks like it's out there. But the world that we experience is not out there, it's in here, in that spaciousness of awareness where everything arises. But because we've been believing that out there was causing my problem, we've separated ourselves from what in fact is cause in the matter, which is our true nature, which is the awareness. So every time there's an issue, you have to start with where you are and what you're believing about yourself, no matter what that issue looks like. It'll most of the time look like somebody else. And if you don't want to do the inner work, I have a number for a drive-by shooting. We might need to get rid of that person, right? But we start at where it actually creates, because that's where power is. That's where the point of connection, authenticity, and everything that we long for. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sue. So the kind of litmus test is, in any moment when you feel less than peaceful, free, easy, then just let that be what I call the little reality check. That says, I'm believing something that's not true, because unless that's what's going on, you don't have the dis-ease, the discomfort, the contraction, the suffering. And so we have access to like a meter of sorts to remind us that if we're suffering, we're believing something that's not true, and that what we're believing may initially look and be experienced as if it's about somebody else. But if we go through the 6 steps, step number 2 is it's about me. If I'm triggered, not only do I have access to it, but I have total access to the entire difficulty, as I know that my being triggered is about me. And I find that place and that early conclusion in those steps. Because when the shift comes here, when I no longer have the personal limiting belief about myself, then the lens clears. And you see things differently, and you actually see things more accurately, and that may give you a point of direction for interaction, for communicating. But if you're caught up in a belief about yourself, which is what's happening if you're triggered, you're believing something about yourself, then you don't have the direct, clear line of connection with the apparent other.
What are the 6 steps?
It's a protocol that I use. It was derived from A Course in Miracles, but it's when you're triggered, like you are with your daughter sometimes, when you feel frustrated or whatever, or with whatever in your life. The first step is I'm upset, I'm triggered. The second step is to acknowledge that it's about me. And that can be a high bar, because it feels like it's because of something she did or he did, right? But your upset is about you. The third step is to name the feeling that showed up in the trigger. I felt like I was not respected. I felt like I was powerless, right? The fourth step is just through free association to allow the memory to come up of an earlier time, maybe in childhood, when you had that same feeling. So the feeling is like the access to the early wounding. The fifth step is, what did I believe about myself when that happened to me? When mommy didn't pick me up from kindergarten on time, I concluded that I was not important. The fear came up, and the feeling of being less than, not important. And that got installed at that point. And the sixth step is a forgiveness step, which is, this is why the work that I do is not a therapeutic model, because we don't do therapy on a wound. We see that it was never true. And through forgiveness, have it dispelled. So those 6 steps, if you'll leave your email with Robin, she'll send you a PDF or a sheet outlining that, because it's a very effective tool. It's the best I've ever found. Before I had the 6 steps, I knew it was a forgiveness process. I intuited that, and I used Ho'oponopono. But the 6 steps is very specific, and it takes you into what I think of as the heart or the core of the wounding.
Shadow work.
It's usually pretty shadowy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all of the repressed, the pain and the anger and all of the repression that we've tried to convince ourselves wasn't true. And then we create adaptive behaviors to try to have the experience that I am important, or that somebody else cares about me. So then we've got a whole box of tools to deal with what in fact is a projection of I'm not important, and we still engage with what we think will be a solution in that projection. It's like trying to to come in consciousness in your dream, and then change all the characters in that dream. You don't have any more access than with this than you do with that dream.
Yes, Elizabeth has a question.
Elizabeth. Yes, dear.
You have to unmute yourself.
Self unmuted. Is that good?
Go ahead.
Okay. If I disappear, it's just a hurricane coming.
Yeah, go ahead.
Level 1. Let me see if I can formulate. So as you know, one of my main things is to be understood and to understand what's going on. Like that's what keeps me safe and sort of drives this bad movie. So with that said, I'm in the middle of not having any idea what's going on, being in it with a different language, with a different way of doing things, just 180 kind of a difference. So the sort of painful navigation of when to just, it's like, I do need to know. I'm going to try to formulate it. A lot of the times with what I'm doing, I do need to know what's going on, and I don't know. I understand that removing, or at least sort of assuaging the wound and then going from there. Do I sound like I've formulated any kind of a question yet?
You're close.
It's like these combinations of, well, just let go, maybe it doesn't matter, right? And I've done that a lot. Like that's been amazing. I mean, that's changing my molecules for sure. But sometimes it really does matter. It has to do with the dog being harmed, or me having to go home at night, just stuff.
Right.
So there's that. It's like we had to let go, maybe energetically, when and how. And then the asking for what I want piece, because I love that process I've been in too. Like, well, what do you want? Well, a lot of times I don't know how to ask for what I want because I don't know what's going on. And I do need to know what's happening on the Mexican person's mind and schedule. So it's a lot.
Yeah. So I would, is it true? You need to know what's going on in the Mexican person's mind. You need to know what's going on in the Mexican person's mind. Is that true?
Sometimes. Yeah,
You know the questions. Can you prove that that's true?
I know.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But it could be, they could be thinking, forget her, I'm about to not show up for the appointment we made. And I need to know that because I'm going to be spending, 5 hours in the sunshine waiting. It's kind of a yes and a no. I mean, I understand ultimately I can't know.
Well, that's the piece that, I mean, the tricky part of this is that when you give up the need to control, which is what that is, the need to understand, it's a level of the need to control so that you'll feel safe. I mean, this is not, and we've worked together enough years, I'm not judging or criticizing you, but the frequency of the need to know is one of fear. And so what it does in terms of how things can show up is it's like clogging up the energetic reality. It's like you're throwing shit at the screen in a way. It doesn't mean that you can't make the inquiry, but it means that the attachment is, and you're aware of the attachment to the need to understand and the need to be understood. So the more that you lighten up with that, the more open the field is, and thank God it's not based in language, although it is based in frequency, yeah. But that, I mean, giving up that adaptive behavior that's pushed you beyond any place that I thought you would ever have to go in this whole situation that you're in there in Mexico. And it's brilliant, really. I mean, what you're doing is big gold stars all over the place. But the more that the relaxing out of the need to know, because you've equated that if I understood it, I could avoid the 5 hours in the sun. You don't know if that's true.
Mhm.
I mean, we equate it with outcome, and we can't know. And every time we think we do, then we're locked into that, and that's resistance. And that clogs up the field. The way we're creating our reality is through our openness, our willingness, our sense of being present with whatever's going on. Not that, and the minute that you think it's something you have to handle, you're already in a different, it's an oppositional relationship with reality.
Handle as if there's a problem, not handle as if there's a schedule, a remodel, and handle the logistics. You mean handle the problem that's not really there. Is that what you mean?
Well, I'm thinking that the remodel and the logistics and all of that shows up as something that you have to handle, and that's justified. And I understand that it seems to be.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Who else is going to do it?
It's the number for the drive-by shooting. We need to send out somebody in Mexico now.
Well, they're saying, what do you want? I mean, yeah.
You've taken on the high bar this time, baby girl.
I know.
Yeah, it's really, really brilliant.
That makes me feel that much better. Thanks,
Well,
Polly.
this much. I know. Is there anybody else you can talk to here?
Yeah, Robin's a coach. Give me Robin.
Yeah, get out your human design.
Okay.
Let's see what's going on.
Can I add a question? I think it's a good general question. Like, what do you think about that, the design of this? Because I think we've all had the experience of, oh my God, I'm making this so difficult for myself so I can work on my stuff. Who do you think decides that? Is it that the bar is just raising in general, or do we take our higher self and create these really difficult?
Yeah, the answer is yes. And
All that?
yeah, but the whole thing is that you want to be free, and you have actually made the commitment to whatever it takes to be free. And that was the invitation. And
Hence my question that you're not answering.
The answer is yes.
All right, I give up. Flag, red flag. Thanks.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Top of the hour.
Okay.
If you would like to go, pause here. This is a good time. We are going to be going to 45 minutes of meditation, silent meditation, which I think is as good as anything else that happens here. And I left the donation for Venmo and PayPal in the chat if you'd like to make a donation. If you're here, there's a basket here. Anything else? We'll see you next week, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. And
3 o'clock for the room.
3 o'clock for the room.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
If you're not, yeah. Is that one? Yeah. Any preference?
You good? Okay, thank you, everyone.